בכל העולם מדברים בחודשים האחרונים, בשנים האחרונות, אולי מאז המשבר הפיננסי, על קפיטליזם מסוג חדש, קפיטליזם שלא מסתכל רק על שורה תחתונה. הבעיה היא שרוב האנשים שמדברים על הנושאים האלה, רובם לא כולם, הם אנשי אקדמיה ולפעמים גם פרשנים ופוליטיקאים. אנשי עסקים לכאורה נמצאים במקום אחר, ולפעמים הם אומרים בחדרים סגורים או בחדרים פתוחים לאנשי אקדמיה ולעיתונאים, רבותיי, זה פשוט לא עובד ככה, אתם חיים על ענן. אבל יש מי שמדבר גם על הנושא הזה ממקום אחר, מהמקום של עולם העסקים, והוא נמצא איתנו היום, דוב סיידמן, שלום לך.
שלום.
אז אני אציג את דוב, קודם כל אני אציג את דוב שדוב הוא ישראלי. דוב הגיע לישראל בגיל צעיר ושהה כאן הרבה שנים, הוא מיד יספר לנו על כך, והוא מדבר גם קצת עברית, עברית לא רעה אגב, אני חייב לציין. ודוב הקים בגיל 28 את חברת LRN, שנותנת ייעוץ לחברות האמריקאיות. החברה הזאת משגשגת, והיא היום עם הכנסות של עשרות מיליוני דולרים בשנה, עם משרדים ב-Fifth Avenue בניו יורק, והיא מייעצת לגופים ולחברות גדולים בארצות הברית, בנושאים שעליהם אנחנו הולכים לדבר היום. אבל דוב, בהכשרתו המקצועית והאקדמית, הוא פילוסוף, הוא למד פילוסופיה ב-UCLA, וגם משפטן מהרווארד. ודוב מדבר על כל הנושאים האלה של קפיטליזם מסוג חדש, של אתיקה בעסקים, של מוסר, ממקום של היותו איש עסקים, וזה כבר נשמע אחרת. שלום דוב.
שלום גיא.
קודם כל דוב, תספר לנו שתי מילים על עצמך, אם נוח בך בעברית, אם נוח לך באנגלית, אתה תבחר על הרקע הישראלי שלך. שהיית כאן בגיל יחסית צעיר, לא נחשבת להצלחה כל כך גדולה.
אני הייתי אמריקאי. My best grade was טוב in English, so I couldn't even get a טוב מאוד in English, and it's very difficult to get so many בלתי מספיק, מספיק בקושי, כמעט מספיק. But my entire report card was that. But I had an excuse. I was learning disabled, dyslexia. And in 5th grade, when the other students were following the Tanakh, I was on the ceiling of the class, figuring out the human dynamics, because I was so scared. When is the teacher going to call on me? So I was just trying to figure out what is that paragraph, and I would practice it and read it out loud when I was called upon. So I think very early in life, I developed a compassion or an empathy for humanity, and who else in the class is also struggling. And later on in life, I found moral philosophy, and I was like dag b'mayim.
תראה, דוב, אנחנו הולכים לדבר עכשיו על אתיקה ועל תרבות עסקית.
כן.
ואני כבר אומר לך שהצופה הישראלי הוא ציני.
נכון.
הוא יסתכל על הבחור האמריקאי הזה בחליפה ויגיד, הוא מדבר איתנו על אתיקה ועל תרבות עסקית, אבל אנחנו יודעים שאי אפשר בעצם לעשות ככה עסקים. כי בסופו של דבר, עסקים זה עסק מאוד אגרסיבי, וצריך
נכון.
להגיע ליעדים, וכשכולם חותכים פינות, ועוקפים מכשולים, גם אתה צריך לעשות את זה. ואי אפשר בעצם להיות איש עסקים מצליח, אם אתה שומר על איזה אתיקה ברמה מאוד גבוהה, או מוסרית וכן הלאה. מה תגיד להם?
קודם כל אני אשאל אותך, זה מצליח? זה מצליח לשנה, שנתיים, and then too big to fail, ובום, crisis. Let's be structural about this. If we are going to have a boom and bust, crisis to opportunity every 10 to 20 years, אפשר לגמור את השיחה עכשיו, אין מה לדבר. But today, יש crisis every 10 days, not every 10 years. So how we're doing business פשוט לא עובד. In the past, when there was a crisis, we would be resilient. We would defend ourselves, manage risk, and hunker down. Like you're sailing in a storm, you take down the sails. Today, there's a storm every day. So we need to learn to sail in the storm with the sails up. We need to be simultaneously adaptive and resilient and protect against harm and crisis, and simultaneously pursue innovation and growth. The only way to have the strength in a world that pushes you around to take the straight line is to be principled, because principled behavior gives you the strength to do what's inconvenient, to do not what the situation calls for, but to operate in a sustainable way.
בואו קודם כל נתרגם את המילה principled, שלטובת הצופים. principle זה בעצם שיש לך עקרונות, שיש לך איזה...
אני אגיד לך עכשיו, I am not here to say that nice guys finish first. This is not about being good or bad. People think that when you talk about עקרונות and morality and doing the right thing, that the opposite, if you're not into that, you're saying אתה רע, or you don't do the right thing. No. There's morality and amorality. Just business. Just do it. Lo chashuv ech. Too big to fail. So it's very simple. We all watched The Godfather, a sandak, right? The most famous scene in The Godfather, and the audiences of Israelis that I've been speaking to have all raised their hand when I've asked them the two questions. Have you seen The Godfather? And is The Godfather still the corporate management Bible, the architecture of modern management?
Management guru.
Management guru.
Marlon Brando. Is The Godfather. Yeah.
So what's the point? If it's just business, הולכים ללוויות ושומעים שהוא היה שמוק בעבודה, but a wonderful husband and a caring father, but a ruthless negotiator, if we can create a separate sphere, a place where it's just business, then greed is good, too big to fail, just do it, man is rational, give him carrots and sticks to extract performance and productivity out of man, a very rational strategy. If you believe that the world is personal, it's not just interconnected, it's interdependent, we rise and fall together, where one banker in London at a bank can lose $2 billion trading at his desk, and whatever you think about what's happening in the Middle East, we did watch one vegetable vendor with a cell phone camera and a few friends spark a revolution towards freedom as one person. So if you think that we are rising and falling together because we are interdependent, then you must accept the idea that everything is personal, and you no longer have the luxury to say morality is personal and everything else is just business. Everything is flipping. And if it's not just business, then you need something to guide us.
ואתה באמת רואה חברות כאלה? אתה רואה דוגמאות כאלה שאתה אומר שיש חברות?
כל יום.
כל יום.
כל יום.
אבל בדוח הזה, The How Report שלך, בעצם אתה מדבר על 3 סוגים בעצם של חברות.
נכון.
אני אתרגם, אתה מדבר על חברות שעובדות בבליינד אובידיאנס, צייתנות.
תעשה את זה ככה, למה? ככה.
עד המצב הקיצוני ביותר, שזה self-governance, שבעצם self-governance אומר שלכל עובד בחברה, יש את היכולת שלו לקבל החלטות על בסיס איזה עקרונות כלליים של החברה. אז קודם כל בוא תסביר לנו מה זה סוגי התרבויות השונים האלה בחברות, ואיזה תוצאות אתה רואה שהן מביאות בחברות השונות.
So there's 3 categories. Well, there's a 4. Anarchy, Tower of Babel. We leave that one alone. One is blind obedience. Just תצעד, do it, ככה, כי אני אומר לך, אם תשאל, למה ככה? ככה. The most popular one is what I call informed acquiescence. Very rational. Everybody plays by the rules. If you play by the rules, you get ahead. If you're not, you leave. It's about success. It's not just sticks and fear. It's about carrots and bonuses and all that. And that's what we see. Business. The next one, where I think it's going, we're at the beginning, is what I call self-governance based on values and principles. We do this because it's the right thing to do. And we make money, but we don't do it to make money. We do it and make money. We don't do it's about significance and making a difference in the world. And basically, we behave the way we do because not to behave that way is no longer a failure to obey another human being, your boss. You're betraying yourself. It's against the values that you bring to work because the values you bring to work are the same as the company's. So we've organized companies into these 3 archetypes, and we did a study, an independent, statistically valid study of 36,000 people's specific observations of how work gets done in their company, how they're treated, how they relate to society, to stockholders, etc. And it turns out that there's good news and bad news. The good news is that if you can create a self-governing organization, you have much less of what you don't want, bad behavior and misconduct, and much more of what you do want. Employee loyalty, satisfied customers, receptivity to new ideas, more innovation, financial performance, etc. The bad news is that only 3% of organizations are self-governing. But I'm optimistic. Why should there be more than 3%? If we are continuing with history and we're not in a new era, then we should talk about reform, what needs to be fixed. We could reset, reboot, or reform. I believe that we're in a new era. And when you're in a new era, we have to listen to Einstein, who said, you can't use thinking from a prior era in a new era. And we are just now beginning to rethink fundamentals. Capitalism, business, the relationships of companies and society, the relationship of companies and customers, and the relationships of companies and their own people. I had a CEO come to me the other day, and asked me a question I never thought I would get asked in my entire life by a CEO. Because we're here in Israel and we followed Mubarak and what happened. Let me tell you how Mubarak plays out in business, in global business. He sits with me in New York and he says, Dov, I've got a problem. It turns out that it took them 17 days to get rid of Mubarak. And he had a military. I don't have a military.
How many days will it take them to get rid of me?
My consumers, my employees, what are the implications for how I run this company, how I structure it? The fact that CEOs are asking questions like that is pretty novel. So that's what gives me optimism, that they're willing to understand the world they're in. Let's look at Netflix. Netflix, it's the company that was first by mail and now by downloading. You know, it's how people get movies, especially in the United States. They were powerful, they were growing, and they felt invincible. They were growing so fast, so they said, how about a price increase? They passed the price increase, and within 48 hours, 800,000 of their customers got together online and said, we are gone. And their stock crashed by 50%. Bank of America tried to charge $5 for a debit card, and the same thing happened. We have democratized to the individual the power to be a force for good or harm, and to the individual the power to organize. So I think we're in a world today where the ability to capture markets, to capture employees, to exert power over people is giving way to the need to generate energy through them. And the reason organizations are changing is the idea of them being vertical, where everybody sits on top of everybody else and commands go up and down, just doesn't work anymore. So back to your questions, these companies are getting flatter, they're less hierarchical, they have fewer rules, fewer policies. The values that they have get translated into specific behaviors that allow you to win. These behaviors are celebrated, they're rewarded, but the organizations are morphing.
Right. So basically what you're saying is that the tools that the management give the various employees is not to do that, or I have to authorize this or authorize that, but we know what are the values of this company, and then if you understand the value of this company, you can perform, you can be independent.
We test it. You go into one company and in this division we just pay expenses, and in this division we pay expenses if you get your boss's approval. You get better behavior here. Because not to cheat here is to betray a system of trust, which is a bigger crime than not getting caught. So we are empirically testing these things. You know, in my company, I have 300 people around the world. You know how we did performance evaluations? Every person picked 20 people to give them feedback. They internalized the feedback, and then they gave themselves a self-evaluation and a self-rating, and we paid bonuses based on מה שאתה חושב על עצמך ולא על מה שאני חושב עליך, because we're giving trust away. The problem with business is that we've studied this. Most organizations, only 9% of companies around the world, including Israel, are high in trust. So even though everybody wants progress, and we only have progress when we innovate, and we only innovate when someone takes a risk. To speak in a meeting, you take a risk. Someone says something in a meeting, you're taking the risk. If you spend money, you're taking the risk of not getting a return. The only time people take risk to innovate, to create progress, is when there's a lot of trust. If there's not a lot of trust, they play batzel. So we need to create more trust, and we do a crazy thing. We go looking for it. Can I trust this person? Checks and balances. We inspect for trust. Trust is a virtue when you give it away. Because when you give trust away, you inspire someone. It's actually a drug. Neuroscientists have proven that when someone receives trust, oxytocin is released in their brain, and whatever makes them scared of you subsides. And I've studied this. Let's start with a simple example. There was a guy in New York, and he sold donuts, sufganiyot or begele. And the guy across the street did the same thing. He sold 3 times to that guy. Now they had an equally fresh donut, same price. If not, this guy can cross the street, take his donut home, go home, reverse engineer it, and copy it. What was the one innovation of the first donut guy? He put a tray on his stand and he trusted his customers, put some money down and take your own change. This thing is scaling. In Indonesia right now, Guy, there's so much corruption. And instead of more and more police, which they're doing, they now have 10,000 honesty cafes where they are teaching Indonesian citizens to take food off the shelves, and instead of going to a cashier, to put money in a jar and make their own change. Ritz-Carlton, they trust their people. Here's $2,000 a day, and you use that money to solve a customer the way you think is right. So I'm seeing this renaissance of management and leadership practices that are about giving trust away and inspiring people.
תכף נדבר על ישראל לסיום. לפני זה אני רוצה לשאול אותך, לחזור לצופים הציניים שלנו, שיגידו, זה נשמע הכל מצוין, אבל יכול להיות שיצא פאד, זה אופנה בגלל האירועים של השנים האחרונות. אז אני רוצה לשאול אותך, היום עוד 5 שנים אנחנו נשב כאן ונסתכל אחורה. איך ייראו התמורות בסקטור העסקי, בעולם, ואולי גם בישראל?
It depends, and here's why. People want freedom. We're seeing a movement towards freedom throughout the world. Freedom from oppressive governments, from dictators. People want freedom from micromanaging bosses. People don't want to be in a little org chart, a little box. Everybody wants freedom. There's 2 types of freedom. Freedom from. And how do you create freedom from a dictator or a micromanaging boss? You tear things down. You create space. The problem is sometimes when we create freedom from, we stop, we think, nitzachnu, ani free. But freedom to pursue happiness, to innovate, to build a great company, it requires frameworks, it requires shared values, it requires a vision and a mission. And I think that the opportunity right now is for leadership to build back up. We're in a crisis, there isn't enough leadership, and there's a vacuum of leadership. Because the individual is powerful, we're going to see people do good things and bad things. And if leadership doesn't step in and inspire people towards good, I'm pessimistic. If leadership wakes up and inspires people to join them in missions worthy of hard work and dedication, I'm optimistic. But I think that on balance, I'm optimistic because I think the world has been restructured. It's not the first time in our life that we've taken something soft, like trust and inspiration, and made it hard. We competed on quality. People said quality is soft, it's an aesthetic, I know good quality when I see it. The Japanese made a science of quality, they measured it, they did it. So now we're declaring humanity job 1. If you look at American companies, Chevron guy is the human energy company, Cisco is the human network, Dow is the human element, Deere is human flourishing, Ally Bank is we speak human. One company after another is telling the world, we want to compete on the basis of our humanity. Who are we and how do we behave? Now, you could be cynical and say, is this just marketing? But at least marketing knows where the world is going, and now it's up to companies to follow that. And I think that we're in the human age. We're in the era of behavior. But I want to say one thing about behavior. We tend to think about behavior in defensive terms. We talk about behavior as something defensive, behave. Or we talk about good behavior, he came out of prison early for good behavior. I am arguing that behavior is now the source of advantage. It's the source of excellence. And when we start to see that we are in an interconnected world, those who make the best connections win, and companies and leaders are going to find very deep ways to connect with people, and there's no deeper way to connect with someone than עקרונות. Is it עקרונות is right? עקרונות. That's the deepest way.
אז יולי 2011, אתה אומנם גר בניו יורק, אבל אתה מגיע לישראל, ואתה הולך בשדרות רוטשילד בתל אביב.
כן.
ומה אתה רואה?
ראיתי, לא שדרות רוטשילד, שדרות אילו הייתי רוטשילד.
Okay.
And then I saw street signs, I saw numbers on every tent. And then I was back in Occupy Wall Street. ראיתי את שכל. היה protest, but it was intelligent, it was about dialogue, and I felt that it was constructive. Whatever side you're on, it was thoughtful. And I think that's what makes Israel special. You know, we lead with our head, you know, etc. In that way. But the Occupy movement, everybody thinks it's about anger and unfairness. I think it's about something deeper. It's not שאנשים כועסים. I think it's not about anger, it's about anguish. יש כאב. Young people feel, I think, that life is not adding up. They're not on track. It's not a jobs crisis. I don't have a job. I don't have a career. What am I building? So I'm very worried that the problem around the world is deeper than אחד כועס על השני, שהוא עשה ביליון ואני לא עשיתי. It's about לאן אני הולך, what's happening with my life. And I think that's very dangerous because we're starting to build a generation of people that are not just unemployed, they are going to become unemployable. They're going to turn 28, 30 and never having had a job. So I think we got to get serious about getting this thing going.
כן, ואתה נמצא כבר יומיים בישראל ופוגש אנשים, וניגשים אליך הרבה אנשים אחרי ההרצאות שלך, ומה אתה מרגיש מהשיחות איתם? מה הם מחפשים?
מחפשים, what's the word for meaning?
משמעות.
משמעות. That as a trained philosopher, the most ancient paradox in philosophy is the paradox של עושר. If you go for עושר, it doesn't come. If you do something in mashma'ut that you're passionate about, עושר finds you. I think the same is true in business. If you do something to be successful, זה לא בא. If you do something of significance, in mashma'ut, success comes. And I'm seeing young people today, they're coming up and they're talking and they're saying, everything is personal. I don't have 2 email addresses, business and this and that. It's all together. If I'm going to spend 10, 12 hours a day at work, it's got to be a meaningful way to spend my life. And there's a crisis out there. The engagement surveys, which measure how much employees care, 7 out of 10 employees today do not care. They are disengaged. And 2 out of those 7 are actively disengaged, meaning they are sabotaging their company. They're going on Facebook and they're saying bad things about their company. That's a big crisis, that the people who have jobs are not giving their all. And we've got to turn that around, and we've got to do that through leadership.
דוב סיידמן, תודה רבה לך.
בבקשה. It was good to be here. Shalom.
שלום, שלום.